Thank you for joining. If you have any questions as we go through this webinar, please type them into the questions box on your screen. We'll be sure to get to those right at the end of the webinar. With that being said, I'll kick it over to Paul Craver, who is one of our senior safety consultants at P3 Propane Safety.
Hey, thank you. Well, so today I am joined by Chris Pare from Prince Gas Company. They're located in what I definitely find to be a beautiful part of South Carolina. Today we're going to be discussing safety walls and why every propane marketer needs one. So Chris is with us today because, well, I spent some time with him this summer doing what we call a compliance assessment. And what I've discovered was that he's kind of a unique breed. He really understands the importance of being organized, especially as it relates to important, like records and documents that are required by various government entities. So when I do these compliance assessments, I'm looking at, pretty much all things DOT, OSHA, NFPA 58 in regards to bulk plants. And I'm also looking to see that the team are using commonly, utilized industry safety practices. So yeah, like I said, I was very impressed by Chris's organization, especially or specifically as it relates to, the DOT required driver qualification files. So if any of you are trying to maintain your own DQ files, you're probably finding that it can be challenging. Not just to keep them organized, but to keep the information current. Chris did a fantastic job at that. Very impressed. So Chris, what drives your desire for such, organization and thorough records?
Kind of as we talked the other day leading into this, I sort of feel like I'm a little bit of an oddball. I don't really have a background in propane, but mine was in sports medicine. But whenever we did a treatment or did something from that with an athlete at the time, I mean, it needs to be documented, and the second you sign your name to it, it was a legal document. So I think some of it may come from that. But as I kind of transitioned into the propane field, keeping some of these records, and then we've also had a couple times where we've been audited and asked to look at those files and things. So over the last few years that I've been here, that's kind of progressed into now knowing a little more of what needs to be maintained, and obviously you need to be able to access those files if an audit from either an insurance company or DOT or whatever that may be comes up.
So do you have any, suggestions, for tips or tricks that have helped you since you started keeping these records?
One thing that I do from the employee standpoint, when I got here, they kept multiple folders for different things, whether it was an employee that had a DOT license or HAZMAT license or education section. So I ended up getting the folders that have multiple pages in those file folders. And that way, when I grab the employee file, if I grab Paul's file, I have like 4 different pages or panels in that particular file. One of them might have their application and some of their, I-9 information in it, things of that nature. One page will be dedicated just to DOT, whether it's a drug test or their DOT physical. And then one panel would be their education. Obviously, we did some education with you back in the spring, and so if there's a certificate or something that goes along with that, then that would be filed under that. So I think that for me helps if we're going back and looking at trying to do that, and then obviously that grows as the employee stays along with you.
Yeah, that's some really good advice. That was one of the things that I noticed with the way you kept this information, just very organized. Every folder was the same. You knew where you would see, what you needed to see. So how do you track, like expirations of medical cards and things? Is there any special trick to that?
I just created a Excel spreadsheet really for me. I mean, I'm sure there's other ways you can do it, but for me, I put it the second we hire them, they'll get added in there. And then expiration date of the driver's license, their driver's license number. I color code whether they have CDL or CDL tanker and HAZMAT. so that I can identify them quickly, because that's stuff that our insurance company asked for and needs to be updated, as well as our drug testing consortium, so that I can keep those drivers lists updated for when they do any kind of a random drug screening. But those with those dates are on there, and then periodically as I go through, I may pull up, or if I added somebody, I'll look at those dates, and again, I color code on the computer. That makes it a little easier for me. If I know it's coming up and they're due in the next couple months, I'll probably make them yellow, meaning, hey, this one's going to need it. And I'll usually text our employee at that time, or if I catch them in the office, talk to them and say, hey, your CDL physical is due next month. We need to try to be working on that. So that's one thing that I do as far as trying to keep track of those dates.
Wow, that's great. So, as we said earlier, the title of today's webinar, it's basically two questions. What is a safety wall, and why does every propane marketer need one? So let's look at the first question. What is a safety wall? So a safety wall, this can be a bookshelf, a filing cabinet. It's really anywhere that you can centralize records and reports, any documents that may be asked for when a government entity pays you a visit. Someone like the Department of Transportation or OSHA, or maybe the fire marshal. Items that should be contained in your safety wall, there's a lot. I'm going to kind of go through it real quick. It's certainly not going to be a fully encompassing list, but you'll find that there's a lot of stuff. For example, like what Chris does, he maintains his own driver qualification files. In there, you need to keep, the original employment application, any DMV records that you've had to pull, road tests, a current medical examiner certificate. When you first hired a new driver, any inquiries to previous employees for safety performance history, drug and alcohol inquiries, copies of their CDL, and pretty sure there's some more stuff there that I haven't written down yet. So that's just the DQ file itself, and Chris he's given you some really good tips on how to keep that organized. But that's not all. You're going to need to keep truck files. The DOT is likely to look at truck files as well. So in each truck file, you should have, the vehicle's maintenance records, any roadside inspections, the 5 or 10-year hydros and the annual VK tests go in there as well. You should have quick access to 90 days of the daily vehicle inspection reports, or the driver vehicle inspection reports. Current monthly meter creep and transfer discharge inspections. Those are done every month. You only have to keep the current months on file. So for example, if you performed it in November, but haven't performed it in December, the November one should be in the file. Once you do your December meter creep and transfer discharge inspection, that November one, you can toss that in the trash can. The DOT doesn't care about that. So the good news, if you're not up to date, if you go out and did them today, you're going to be current and everybody will be happy. You need to have current federal DOT inspection records for the CMV, and there's additional records as well that would be needed to be kept in that file. As you can see, our list is growing quite a bit. Employee training records. This is another important aspect of your safety wall. You need to have, DOT HAZMAT training, also known as HM126F. That's training that has to be given within 90 days of hired and prior to an employee working on their own, and then that needs reoccurring training every 3 years. Now, included in this DOT HAZMAT training, there's general awareness training, function-specific training, which is according to the job each employee is performing. You need emergency response training and security awareness training. Also, measures to protect employee from normal hazards and protective measures during uncontrolled releases. I kind of like to combine the DOT HAZMAT training with HAZCOM training, so that I can kind of cover two birds with one stone. Now, if your location performs cylinder requalifications, you need documented training prior to an employee actually requalifying cylinders, and then reoccurring training once every 3 years. Same thing with forklift training. Fire extinguisher training, that should be annual. And then you should be performing, at very least, monthly safety meetings. Now, all this training needs to be documented in an employee folder or in a training folder, stored up on your safety wall so that you can produce this information depending on who needs it. For example, the DOT might want cylinder requalification training records. And I can almost assure you, if they're auditing you and you have a RIN number, they're probably going to want to see that training. And then OSHA, they're going to be looking for things like forklift training, fire extinguisher training, as well as the safety meetings. So there's still a lot more you're going to want to keep on your wall. Some examples of this are like a fire safety analysis for all your bulk plants. You know, Chris, kind of talk what we went through trying to get a fire safety analysis for yours. I think we eventually got there, but it wouldn't have been too easy had the fire marshal been looking for it that day, right?
No, if they wanted it that day, that was a different one. Again, for me transitioning in, this is still a learning process of what we need and on file. I think we did find something that day, but it might not have been the most updated version. So tracking down that and getting that all put together appropriately, it took us, I don't know, would you 3-4 days, I think?
Something like that,
The
yeah.
time you were here, yeah. So again, some of it is you know, knowing things you need to take care of. Some of the things is learning things that you need to take care of and add to your list. And then, you know, the other thing that sort of the stage we're in, and a couple of our coworkers here are helping us do, is not only just implementing that, like you're talking about the monthly meter creep test and things of that nature, but not only implementing it, but then staying up with it.
Exactly. And I'm sure a spreadsheet can help with that. So
Probably.
there's a few other things you need. I think for the last 10 years now, NFPA 58 has required operation and maintenance manuals for all bulk plants. Don't forget DOT security plans for each bulk plant. They need to be site specific. Bulk plant inspections. If you have more than 10 or more employees, you know, in one location, you need an emergency action plan, as well as 5 years of OSHA 300 logs. You need a current RIN letter if you're requalifying cylinders, as well as maintain a good list, a good copy of all your DOT requalification records. Again, DOT, they're really big. If you got a RIN letter and they're going to come visit you, I can guarantee you they're going to look at your requalification documents, the training, the letter, all 9 yards. You need to have copies of the required documented inspections of ASCB containers that contain more than 5%. DOT might want to see that. And if you have jurisdictional systems, the safety wall is a good place to store binders for each system where you document all your required tests and records of those systems. So that's a lot of stuff. And honestly, I don't think I've got everything on the list. So that's quite a bit. So why does every propane marketer need one? Why do you need a safety wall? Well, in my opinion, when a government entity, whether it's DOT, OSHA, or some type of local inspector, shows up at your front door, or if they've contacted you to schedule a visit, you have a limited amount of time to gather the information that's needed. You may not have time to ensure that this information is complete or even accurate. So by maintaining these documents and storing them where you can easily retrieve them, following up on a regular basis with each item. For example, a DOT security plan, that has to be reviewed annually. So making sure that you're following up, keeping these things up to date, you'll be able to easily retrieve them. It'll save you time, and it'll ensure that you come out of the visit in good shape with limited or no follow-up actions required, which is really the goal, right? You want to be able to come out of one of these visits and say, phew, all good here. I've done my job. Got no fines, no corrective actions required. And then you can sit back and be proud of what you've done. So that's all I've got today. Chris, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, not at the moment.
All right, cool. So I think we could probably jump over to the questions if we have any.
Yep, it looks like we have a question. So this first question is, what could be the first step I take when starting to create my safety wall?
So, so I guess my answer to be that if you're concerned, you know, where you stand, or if you have a complete list, or if you want to start the safety wall, one of the things I would suggest to do would be to, you know, to give P3 a call. You know, talk to someone like myself or one of my co-workers, Brent Cammett or John Horner. We could schedule a meeting to perhaps discuss an on-site visit, maybe by myself or one of them, where we can, you know, help you organize the wall. We can do a complete, you know, compliance assessment. These things take anywhere from, you know, 2 days on the bare minimum. And we can expand that as needed to things like we can, you know, inspect bulk plants, do some driver and service tech ride-alongs, also to ensure that you're dotting all your I's and crossing all your T's. But yeah, definitely giving one of us a call or scheduling a meeting would probably be my first step if I was you.
Awesome. And then somebody else asks if DOT security plans have to be reviewed annually.
Yes, they do. You should have a page near the front of the binder with a review date, who reviewed it, what did you change, if anything, and things like that. It's usually right towards the front of the binder once every calendar year, but within a year. I think it's every 12 months.
And then probably our last question is, what is the best way to help understand what we need as a company to stay in compliance? And is there any sort of checklist that they can go through?
I mean, I have a checklist in that it's an audit, if you will, that I perform, that I've developed over, you know, the last 10 years of performing these types of audits. But I don't know of any checklist. I certainly think that, you know, we can help with in regards to that. You know, I can provide something if needed. Please reach out to me and I can put a list together of everything that I believe you would need for sure.
Awesome. So Chris, Paul, I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to add, but if not, that should wrap everything up for today.
All right, well, thanks everybody. I just want to say, I know it seems like a lot, it really is. But once you get organized and you have I don't know, a calendar to update certain things, and as time goes on to make sure you're up to date, it's not that hard. The hardest part's going to be getting set up, no doubt about it. And thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Paul and Chris, for your time. And thank you, everybody, for joining.
Thanks.